turn things over to you.
And so just another note on that, I found out on Tuesday that I'm actually the only one who's going to be viewing our recordings. I thought it was going to be myself and my professor. So it's just me. It's actually a self-assessment of myself, just watching the way I teach. And so you don't have to be worried that this is going to be in front of a class and other people are going to be watching it. It's actually just me. So again, just to try to be sensitive to, the things that you share and how very important vulnerability can be to this type of group and setting, and to hopefully not hold you or deter you from doing that if you so wish. So beautiful people, I love your faces. Thank you so much for coming. And for the new faces, let me see, we have Athena. Yes, Athena, can you just introduce yourself? Tell us if you are currently married, if you're single, if you're engaged, what is? You're on mute.
There we go. Hi, everybody. My name's Athena Flamporis, and I'm single. Never married, never engaged, just single. So, and I'm from New Jersey. So this is a great way too. Zoom is I'm not a Zoom fan, but this is great. Bible studies with Zoom is wonderful.
I agree.
Part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And you said just single, but just single is not, that kind of, puts it perhaps a different kind of spin on there. This is a time of that, you can join us and learn. And I want to talk a little bit about, some of the takeaways that I believe can happen. Can you mute yourself? Because I think there's a background noise there. I'm sorry, there it is. Okay. So anyway, do not despise the singleness at this moment, is my encouragement to you. And so Despina, have you been here before? I have two Despinas on my screen.
Yeah. I'm imagining and believing that one of the Vespinas is someone who attends also our Thursday Bible study. Platinus. I'm not positive, but Nancy, I think you had said, Nancy, you had shared with me that Vespina was going to be joining us as well, but she may not always be in the room and able to listen. So I think that's why she's keeping the picture off. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome. Everyone else, I think, was a part of our group last week. I just wanted to, now before I have to close all kinds of windows here, just summarize a little bit of what we went over last week. And just to remind you and let Athena know that we're actually working out of this book, which is The Journey of Marriage. And we're using it as a reference to kind of guide our conversations. And so last week we talked about how the church sees marriage, and we compared that to how the secular view and definition of marriage, and how important it is to ground ourselves in what God calls marriage to be, especially when it is that we're on that journey and we are tempted to veer off the path in which God called the marriage to be. And so reminding ourselves of what it was intended to be helps us to get back on track. And that very easily happens, with life, and that none of us is perfect on this side of eternity. And so we are all working and we all are in need of mercy. And so Father Petriti shared with me a quote that the author, one of the authors of the book, shared with him, I believe. Father Petriti, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Dr. Philip Mamalaka said, "My spouse is never in the way of Christ, but they are the way to Christ.
Yep.
Is that right, Father Patrice? Is that what he
That's
said?
exactly it. Our spouse is never in the way, but they are, once we're married, they are the way to Christ. So there's no other way to our salvation except with our spouse, and in a way through them, through our marriage with them, loving them, and so forth.
Mhm. So one of the, I thought that was a beautiful quote because it really puts the definition of marriage into perspective and what God called for marriage to be, which is the path towards salvation. And that's one of the things, how we defined, how we were led through our study to understand marriage and what God called it to be. The other thing that we talked about is oneness, the importance of oneness, and how that is the path that we should be on and that we should be walking toward every single day, moment by moment, opportunity by opportunity. God's love in marriage makes us perfect, and that is that process of salvation in marriage. The other thing that I wanted to point out that we talked about was marriage is sacred. It's a sacrament. It's created by God. And because of that, it's going to be different than that idea that the world has that marriage is, the way it tries to, well, marriage is so fluid right now, and how it's broadened up the definition for marriage. And so it was important for us to do that. So then that way, when we take our next steps in this session, for us to, again, ground ourselves and remind that we are called to be one, that we are on a path toward oneness, and that is towards salvation. And so I want to start off with the point to say the journey toward oneness has its challenges. And we know, and as I mentioned before, that it does lead to salvation. How many of you guys can, what are your feelings about that initially? And maybe not speak it out loud, but I want you to start to think about how the challenges, or rather the challenges that exist that start to veer us off that path. And I actually want you to start visualizing that. So we have the path that we're on toward oneness, and how every single day, moment by moment, we have an opportunity to either choose to stay on that path that leads towards salvation, or we have a choice to veer off that path. I heard somebody say this, and honestly, I don't remember who said it, but the difference between happy couples and unhappy couples is not the differences. It's not that they have the different amount of differences or conflicts or difficulties, but it is how they choose to deal with these issues that can predict whether or not there will be marital distress. So a lot of times you'll hear people say, well, we're just so different. We're just on different paths. We just don't have too much in common. And then you ask other couples that are happy in their marriage, and if you really truly measure and you were to write out what those things were, the differences and the difficulties and the conflicts that they've had in their lives, and the list is probably going to be very similar. However, the difference is the choices that they make to stay on that path toward oneness, whether or not it will lead to marital distress.
Sophia, may I interject?
Yes, sir.
So one of the places you may have read that was in session 1. It says,
Was it session?
it's on page 11, Philip quotes, research indicates that couples who divorce have 9 areas of major difficulties. Couples who are successfully married also have 9 areas of major difficulties. Successful marriage couples attend to these difficulties. Couples in failed marriages do not attend to these difficulties. So the main factor in success or failure in marriage is whether we actually attend to the difficulties or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to let that sit for a second. And I'd like for you to think about what may cause us to not address some of those difficulties, what keeps us from making choices that veer us off that path. Now, all of us are working with our big, dark egos, right? All of us are working with egos that really like to, react and exalt themselves above what we know God has called our marriages to, which is oneness in the path of salvation, on the path of salvation. And so God knows that we all need mercy and we all fall short, but it is a choice to walk toward oneness and choose that path. And so today we wanted to talk a little bit about what some of what John Gottman, and he is a therapist, he and his wife, who have been doing counseling, therapeutic work for over 40 years. And he did some research and he came to find out that there are predictors of divorce. And this doesn't mean that if these things are operating in your marriage or have operated in your marriage, that you are doomed for divorce. That's not what this means. However, if they are not tended to, and the slippery slope goes all the way down to the bottom, well, the bottom is all the way off of the path of salvation, and it could land you in marital distress and eventual divorce. And so he identified these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. When we think about the apocalypse, obviously that's in St. John wrote that, it's in Revelation, and it's basically the beginning of the end, right? And so 4 things that he identified. And these things are behavioral things, and they can also be verbal or nonverbal actions toward our spouse or against our spouse. The first one is criticism. The second one is contempt. The third one is defensiveness. And the fourth one is stonewalling. Now, I know that there are some of you that are not married on this call, and you're probably thinking, well, how do I apply this to myself? Well, you're in relationships now. Whether they are with a significant other or not, I would really reflect on what my reactions are to those that I'm currently in relationship with, so that you would start practicing some healthy ways in reacting and being and doing life in the relationships that you currently have. These things can appear during conflict. And like I mentioned before, they can lead to marital dissatisfaction and eventually marital distress, and lastly, divorce. And if this is not corrected, it will become a cyclical pattern and it will increase the stress in the marriage. Any questions so far?
What was the last one you said?
Sure, stonewalling. And we're going to go through each of these.
Okay.
We're going to define them. I'll also give you a little video sample of what this looks like. I'm sorry? Did somebody else have a question? Okay. So some of the marital conflicts that can come up for many of you that have been married for more than half a second, you can probably name some. Marital conflict can be anything, personality differences, whether you're a day person, the other one is a night person, the division of labor, different parenting styles, whether or not he or she left the seat up or not, small things that when responded to in certain kinds of ways can actually start to deplete and veer us off of the path. So some statistics that Dr. Philip, and I don't want to not give credit to the other author, Dr. Charles
Ioannidis.
Ioannidis.
Father
wrote,
Charles Ioannidis.
Father Charles. Okay, good. Some of the statistics that they mentioned, which I think help us to give us an idea. So 40, I think we said this the first session, 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce. I believe that now that is more toward 50%. I'm not quite sure what year this book was written in, but 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce. 30% of all couples report being unhappy. 50% of all divorces occur during the first 7 years. 45% of first marriages will not see their 25th anniversary. So tell me, what are any of those numbers? Are they shocking? What are your thoughts?
And this journal, the Journey of Marriage handbook is probably close to 20 years old now. So these statistics, we can imagine they've only gotten worse. We do know that during the period of time that we were quarantining and COVID, actually, you would think that might have helped marriages, like people were forced to have to get along with each other. But I guess the statistics showed instead that divorces went up as people were like forced to have to face things about themselves and their marriage, and so sadly it contributed to the rise in the rate of divorce. Nisia, I know Nisia had her hand up, and I see Angela nodding.
Well, you know what, you just said what I was actually going to address about how I think, just from the relationships that I've had, and also just from talking to many of my friends who've been married for a number of years, I think that when a lot of the division and separation happens because each person can't, like you said, face the darker facets of their personality, or they don't think they can work through something, or they think if this person has brought the worst out in them, for example, that it's not reconcilable. And that's, I think, a big misconception to a certain degree in our present day society. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but for example, I dated somebody who, when I addressed something that was really important to me, I remember him saying, well, he just wanted to start all over and forget about the problems that were there in the relationship I had with him, because he didn't feel like accepting that they were problems. And I guess he thought, well, if I start with somebody new, then I won't have these problems anymore. And I remember somebody saying to me, that's because he didn't love you enough. But I'm not necessarily sure that that's true, because I think that sometimes people run away from themselves. I felt the same way too at times. Sort of like, oh gosh, how can I fix this now? Or will they ever see me in a different light again, or a positive light?
I think you're right on several points. I think that it's difficult, or rather it's sometimes easier for someone to give up, to say, I'd rather start over than continue on and do the hard work that is required. I think the reason why we started with how the church sees marriage is because it is fundamental to our salvation to work it out. We have an understanding that to be in marriage, we are making a commitment, an eternal one, to work it out in spite of the imperfections of that person. That will start in the relationship phase, in the boyfriend-girlfriend phase. If there isn't that value, if there isn't that grounding or that understanding, or that conviction, or however you want to call that decision that they've made up in their mind. Now, you don't have to be an Orthodox Christian to believe that way. There are plenty of people who believe that way. but you know, has to be in there. It has to be in there. And if it's not in there, I mean, and then it's so super complicated because we're all so super complicated, right? Then you think about, well, what is his family of origin? What are they used to doing, you know, when conflict comes, and are they used to responding to one another? And actually, we're going to get into that in one of our sessions, where we're going to look at our history and our background and what the DNA behind us can predict or tell us about our own behavior and the behavior of our spouse, and how important that is. Does that make sense?
If I
Cindy.
can just, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, Cindy.
Yeah. After years of marriage and watching what goes on over the last 51 years, I think people are making mistakes before they get married. They merge as a couple and they don't deal with the differences before they take the vows, and they assume that the differences won't make a problem. So you're starting out already failing because you haven't dealt with things that you should be dealing with before you take those steps. And I think that that contributes an awful lot to what happens once people are married. If you're different, there's nothing wrong with being different, but if you're different in a way that you're ignoring, then I think you're setting yourself up for failure. And I think there's an awful lot of that going on today, where people get married and they say, it'll all work out.
Love
That's
or
not
conquer
true.
it all.
That's not
Yeah.
true. So
Yeah, but why, Mom? Let's talk about why they overlook that. We talked
because
about
they
that
don't
last week.
care.
No,
Because
there's more than that. But why don't they care? Because what's clouding their judgment? That was what we talked about last week.
It's not so much what's clouding their judgment, but they're recognizing that it's not time to get married yet, that they don't seem to be aware that there are issues that they should be dealing with. And I don't understand that, quite
Yeah,
frankly.
but I'm trying to get to another point too. And anyway, I don't know, but.
That's it.
Patrice, did you have something to say?
So if I may just comment to both of what you said. So yes, Cindy, that is very true, that we go into a marriage, as Sophia was saying before, with the distorted understanding of what marriage really is. The Orthodox Church, when it focuses us on marriage as a means of working out your salvation, it focuses us on, therefore, the need that we're continually going to have to repent, that marriage has a lot more about us changing than it does about the other person being the way that we want them to be, and the circumstance being the way that we want it to be in our marriage. So I think that Nisia was trying to allude back to what we were saying last time. The next session that we go over, session 3 in this, is actually about that whole area. So we might want to just put a little draw a little parentheses on this topic, and because we'll be dealing with it much more in the next session, kind of talking about family of origin, making actually what they do in the marriage preparation material is they make a genogram where you don't just make a family tree, you kind of make a family tree of relationships, particularly of marriage relationships. So you then can look at what are those preconceived ideas, expectations, and baggage that we have from our past that we bring into marriage. We do that so couples are doing exactly what you're saying, Cindy. So they will look at the issues that they're going to face beforehand, knowing that we there's so much more that we just don't see because we're still growing spiritually, and we don't see everything at once. If any of us were to see the real struggle, the real change that had to come about in us before we got married, probably none of us would ever get married, but then none of us also would never find salvation. God only reveals a little bit to us at time of our own brokenness, so we can work on that, as he keeps leading us slowly along to ultimately the giving ourselves completely over to him, so he can live in us, and that's what we try to do as a couple too.
Good. Thank you, Father Patrides. The other thing that I wanted to talk about with the statistics, which it says 30% of all couples report being unhappy, which is kind of what I wanted to say there is report being unhappy, and how struck I was by, I said last session, one of the quotes that Dr. Philip Mamalakis and Father Charles wrote in the book was, God wants the happily ever after for us. Happily ever after is salvation. So understanding, is kind of speaking to that point, Nisia, am I saying that right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Nisia.
Okay, Nisia, is that what marriage means to a person is important, and that happily ever after, what is that defined? How do they define that? And, you know, happiness is not necessarily what the world says happiness needs to look like. And so very often people will jump ship because, well, I'm just not happy anymore. And, you know, that happy is subjective and fully, you know, comes from a place of however they define that. And so I thought I really wanted to make that point, just because I've heard that so much, you know, just I want to be happy. Well, yes, everyone wants to be happy. What does that really mean? And really grounding that in what God calls it to be is important. So moving
Happiness
on to
in the church. I'm sorry, Sophia. So we might end that by saying happiness in the church is actually defined by you can see it right in the Beatitudes, you know, blessedness. And the word in the Greek, makari, for blessed are the poor in spirit, makari ptokiam pneumati, and so forth. That word makari was really, for the ancient Greeks, a happiness that only the gods had, that mankind could never experience that kind of happiness. But in the life in Christ, we are able to enter that kind of happiness. But the Beatitudes themselves spell out this wonderful picture of marriage, you know, because it's talking about all of these things that in our minds and in our worldly view, who wants to be poor? Who wants to suffer hunger and thirst? Who wants to be meek? Who wants to be spoken against? You know, but the very things that that the world kind of shuns and says are not we don't want to have because that'll make you unhappy. The Lord paradoxically says, no, there's a path here that leads to true happiness.
Beautiful. Another quote from the reference book: marriage is a journey of healing your own imperfections by learning to love your spouse, imperfections and all. Again, another key principle to keeping us on that path. So the first horseman that we want to look at is criticism. Now, criticism is not necessarily all negative. It can be constructive, and it's all in the delivery. Constructive criticism focuses on the issue or the problem, but doesn't personify it, doesn't make it personal. Constructive criticism actually grows you toward one another, toward intimacy. Destructive criticism, on the other hand, is a direct attack on the person. You no longer are fighting about the issue that caused the conflict, but you're now attacking the person. And, you know, has potential, again, to veer us off that path. It can become an insult, something said that's sarcastic, name calling, impatience. I see some of you nodding your head. Yeah, we've all been there. Let me show you an example of what that looks like. And I've never had to share my screen, so please be patient with me here. And let's see.
You go in through the green box share screen, and it should bring up whatever the pages you have open. And if you click on the page that you want, it should then bring us all to that page. Do you see, like, if by hitting share screen, it brings you to like the pages that you have open on your computer?
It doesn't. Let me see, hold on. It just brings me into the settings.
Are
Okay,
you,
hold on. Maybe I'm in the wrong thing.
if
You're
you,
at the
go-
bottom of the page.
Oh, there it is. Got it. Got it. Okay. Let's go here. I think this is what I want. Pardon me. Okay. Hold on. I get it. All right.
it's okay.
There we go. Okay. Does everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to fast forward us here to criticism. Okay.
Are we meant to be hearing something right now, Sophia?
Not yet. Not yet.
Right. Are you hearing something?
Yes. Can you hear it?
It's not, no. So there's another thing that has to be done in order for people to be able to hear when you play a video. And I'm trying to remember what that is. Is that under advanced sharing options?
You go
No.
back to shared screen, and at the very bottom of that page, there's a little box you can click to include sound.
Okay, so you hit the green button, and in the bottom left corner, you'll see a little box that says share sound. Thank you, Deacon Jeff. Do you see that, Sophia?
No, it's
If you click on the green button, share screen again, it brings up the different screens that you have
okay. So
open,
hit the-
and then there's a little box in the bottom left-hand corner that says share sound.
Oh, I see it. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. It won't
Yeah.
happen to them. Okay, wants me to put in the password. Good now. All right, can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here we go again.
Because that's your way of dealing with everything. You don't do it. You don't want to do it, you don't do it. It's like doing your chores. What are you doing to make the chore thing change, you know? Like you want that to run differently where they do more chores. What kind of planning have you and time have you spent fixing it? Or you just keep telling me you want it to run differently?
That I'm trying to say is that you never talk about anything until it's crisis point and we're in the middle of a fight. You never bring anything up in a neutral territory when it can be effective.
Okay. So those examples were fairly benign, I think, of what I've actually seen in a therapeutic context. But what did you think? Some thoughts. What did you think about the body language? What I thought was interesting about that second video is that they had a lie detector test strapped on to themselves. I don't know what that was about, but anyway, any thoughts?
The language
Oh.
was you know, instead of identifying the action and speaking about the action and what was wrong about the action, it was what you yourself are wrong about.
And I agree as well. I'm sorry, Sophia.
Nope, please.
Oh no, I was just going to say I agree. Just to piggyback on Father Patrice, it was that and not the I feel like this, you know, it's going at and not stating how that person feels. So while you think that he started off, I'm sorry, yeah, the person started off on the wrong foot to begin with.
Mhm. Destructive, right? That's what we defined as destructive criticism, is that it's attacking. It's not, I feel, like Cornelia said, it's you did this, you did that. Anybody else? So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, which I thought also is a Gottman thing. Gottman has a lot of brilliant things, resources and tools, and he's really helped couples, again, for a very long time. I wanted to interject this or teach this at the end of our time, but I think that it's useful now, and it's called the emotional bank account. Anybody ever heard of that? Okay, I see a couple of heads. Okay. So the emotional bank account, when you think about a bank account, you think about depositing money in there. You want to have money in there. You don't want a negative balance. And so the emotional bank account works in a very similar way. Basically, it represents the positive and the negative balances in relationship. The goal is to maintain a high daily balance. Now, you can really use this in any relationship that you have, if you think about it. Deposits are positive interactions, right? So anybody have an idea? Give me an example of what a positive interaction might be in a relationship. Something simple.
A hug.
A hug that nobody asked for, right? Yeah, a hug. One more. Yes, Stevie.
If someone comes home and starts talking about their day, that the other person would show genuine interest and ask follow-up questions instead of saying like, oh, I have to make dinner right now or something like that.
Yes. How quickly can that turn into a negative or withdrawal, right? Which we're going to talk about, right? Because they'd be like on the phone while you're talking about your day, right? That could turn into a negative interaction, which is a withdrawal, right? So deposits, positive interactions. Withdrawals are negative interactions. We want to maintain a high balance daily, because every so often there's going to be a time where a big withdrawal comes. And so if you have a high daily balance, then you'll have enough in there to withstand and hopefully making you a little bit more resilient in that particular situation. So a simple act of showing your partner that you care and support them. Sometimes, you know, the expectation is that you would do one person in the relationship would do a big romantic gesture to try to fill that bank up. And when it's very, very negative. So according to Gottman, that's not the best way to do that. Can that work? Maybe in the moment, but along the journey and along the path, the better way to deal with the emotional bank account is to deposit in simple acts of showing support and love on a daily basis. The other thing I want you to understand and to be aware of is that the weight of withdrawal and deposit is not the same. So it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. What does that mean? That means that for every withdrawal, you have to put in 5 positive interactions. Now, this sounds kind of like, I don't know what this might sound like, maybe too simplistic, but there is actual evidence behind this. So for every negative interaction, you're withdrawing 5 of the small, simple acts that you worked hard to deposit into the emotional bank account. So, and the other thing that I want to highlight is that with this emotional bank account, this is not about keeping score. So it's not that Stevie has a bank account and then her husband has a bank account. It's not that Angela has a bank account and Angela, I forgot your husband's name.
George.
George, that George has a bank account. No, it's one bank account. It's one bank account. Because then it starts to be, you know, it starts to become about keeping score. And that's not what we want. Yes.
May I interject something that I find very true, but also is a little bit humorous from Dr. Al Rossi. He said that men and women do math differently. You know, he said, you know, when a husband remembers their wedding anniversary and takes his wife out to a nice dinner and buys her flowers and, you know, and wines and dines her the whole night, he thinks to himself he scored 100. And the next day when she gets upset that he left his clothes on the floor and didn't put them into the hamper, he's like, why are you getting upset at me? I just did, you know, I just gave you such a wonderful night last night. And he said, so a wife, she doesn't do addition. You know, one thing adds up to 100. Everything that she does is one. So every time she washes his clothes, that's one. Every time that she makes the bed, that's one. You know, and so for the wife, the whining and the dining and the whole big night, that just was a one, and the husband just needs to remember that.
That is accurate and correct. Now, I can only stick to the evidence and the research that I have in front of me. However, I don't know that that's completely wrong, Father Patrini. So I can agree with you. Yeah. So basically, your account is a we account, not a me account. So keep that in mind. So as we're talking about these 4 horsemen, criticism starts to withdraw from that account. Let's go to our second one, contempt. I'm going to share my screen again, and it's going to be, hopefully, it's going to have to be from my notes this time. Give me 1 second, I'm sorry. I
Take
moved to
your time.
defensiveness and we're actually at contempt.
While you're searching, I'll share one more thing that I've heard, that we often treat patience as a savings account. Like we show patience, then we say, I'm all out, I have no more patience. But we need to always think of patience as we think of it as a checking account, right? In the same way that we write checks and then they're all out. We think of patience the same way, when it really is a savings account. You can only make deposits of patience. There's never really withdrawals of patience. You know, you're in a circumstance that you don't feel like you want to, but you still make the choice to go along and to be open to it.
Okay, thank you, Father Patrides. We are going to move on to contempt.
So we're skipping.
Did I skip one?
Oh, no, contempt is the second one. You're right. Yeah.
Well, I want you to know that I'm here and I want to hear what you have to say. And I can just listen. If you give me a chance, just let me listen.
Yeah, but a lot of the time I already know what you're gonna say. Oh, it'll be alright. Oh, we'll get through it. Oh, we'll make it, it'll be okay. Oh, I love you. I'm behind you.
But you practically, you have to
I'm gonna give you an
start this little
attitude.
thing like, well, what do you need it for? Well, what do you need it for? Why can't you just be nice about it?
All right, good old contempt. It is criticism to another level. You see how they brought it up another level, right? Did you hear it? With the mocking and the... Any thoughts? Anyone have any comments about that?
I absolutely hate that, actually.
Mm.
Yep. It's one of my biggest pet peeves.
All I saw in there was a lack of respect, like taking the husband taking the wife for granted. It was just a pure lack of respect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was very belittling in both scenarios, making the other spouse feel very small.
Mm. Yeah. Very small, lack of respect, very small. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Were you talking, Sharon? I'm sorry. No, Stevie?
Yeah, it seemed to me, and maybe it's because we did this second in order, but it seems to me that the order followed what you might expect to happen in an actual conflict. Like in my house, it's like contempt is more likely to follow a criticism. So like if somebody comes with like an argument as to why someone else is doing always does the wrong thing and that person feels attacked, then it seems like if you don't know what to say because you're feeling attacked, you might slip into contempt as like a defensive way of like dealing with the criticism. Is that something that you think is a true pattern, or is that like in my head?
Yes. No, not like in your head at all. No, actually, that's appropriate. And actually, that's the slippery slope we're talking about, right, Father Patrides?
Yep.
It's kind of, that's what we're talking about. Go ahead.
It's also, like you could see, especially in the first example, how a pattern develops in terms of how, what we expect the other person to react as. Like he was saying, oh, you're gonna say it's okay, and da da da. And even if she makes a concerted effort to change how she approaches a situation, it seems like the routine has been set so that the default goes back into the, oh, you're going to tell me this, and this. So there's a reluctance to see any kind of change that actually somebody does for themselves.
So there's a cycle here. There's a pattern that has been embedded or, you know, established. And it sounds like that particular gentleman is stuck in it and is having a difficult time getting out of it, even though she's reaching out in a positive way. Yeah. Yeah. It can become extremely difficult when it is that those patterns are set. And when you fall into these patterns into some of these traps, you know, and you have, let's say, a gentleman in that way who, even after the wife or the spouse's bid to connect and do that appropriately time after time, that might be the time where you need outside intervention, where you need your priest to come in, where you need a therapist to come in. I am not of the thought that you need to see a therapist for the rest of your life. Some people believe that's true, and that's okay. And that's, you know, a therapist comes and joins alongside of you to journey with you, to help give you some tools, to serve as a partner, to assess, to be an unbiased person, so that they can give you some things and hopefully step out and you can be able to do it on your own. So yeah, that might be a way to deal when you're stuck in a pattern, in a cycle, that it's difficult for one of the partners. You're not getting feedback. You're not getting somebody to bite to actually get back on that path of oneness with you. That might be the time to get other help. Father Patrice, did you have anything to add?
No, I was just thinking again about the people that we have in our session here that who are not married. You know, and thinking of the difference when you're experiencing contempt in marriage, there's a stronger feeling of really being stuck, you know, in a relationship that you may be in outside of the context of marriage. Oftentimes when things get to contempt, you know, people are just determining, well, you know, I'm going to close this door. You know, I'm not going to, why continue along these lines? But it really is the call, right, of Christ and the gospel. If we are to love our enemies, at those times when someone is showing contempt towards us, to in a very similar manner, to instead continue to turn towards them in whatever ways that we can, and asking God to help us to continue to love them in those contexts. Even if the other person is not, you know, necessarily willing, you know, to change.
And how very difficult that is to continue to turn toward your spouse, your partner, when it is that you are being met with contempt, with criticism. But like Father Patrice said, it is the call of marriage. It is the call to salvation. I'm going to move towards our third horseman, and that is defensiveness, which in our video I have to go back. So let's do that.
Did anybody have the chance to look over the materials that were in the pamphlet as Sophia lines this up? Can I ask? Just verbally to say if you had a chance. That's why I'm showing
Yes.
them, so you can.
Good. All right, here we go.
Well, Barb, like I said,
But
it's
you're
not a
always
good
watching
time.
TV.
What do you mean I'm always watching TV? I'm working. Can I watch the news? You're always watching TV and the kids.
No, the TV's
I
usually
can't.
off.
I can't watch a little bit of TV.
Yeah.
Because you look at me, you know, you always says that
Honey,
you
it's
failed again. It bothers me.
because money, see, money is so important to you and really not that important to me. And I am trying to understand. I'm trying to somehow grasp how important it is to you, but I fail to get it. I just don't get it because it's not, to me, it's not as important.
Oh boy. So this is our effort to protect ourselves from an attack and really from being hurt. I'm sorry, is she still talking? Sorry, my video is still going. This one is again, we're sliding down the slope, and it can typically happen this way. So we have criticism and then contempt and defensiveness. Sometimes these happen all in one moments right after the other. But it basically builds a wall. At this point, there is a wall between you and your partner. It blocks the connection and blocks intimacy. But very often, as you saw in these videos, people were feeling attacked, so they what? Defend themselves. Any thoughts? Yes.
My,
Cornelia.
I'm sorry, me or somebody else?
Go ahead, Cornelius, then Nicia.
I'm sorry. My thought was, what is the need for defending oneself? What is that person that's defending themselves afraid of? That would be my question. Just getting to the root of, okay, I'm putting up a defense, but what is the defense coming up for? What is it that I'm afraid of being exposed or coming out to the forefront? So that was my thought when looking at both stories.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Any ideas about that? And I know Nicia is going to go next, but think about that. What is it that when we are defensive, what are we doing? What is happening there? Nicia.
Oh, well, let's see. Deflecting blame. So, but I have so many questions about this right now because first of all, the way they're talking to one another is very civilized. If somebody came to me very calm like that and talked to me, or I didn't catch somebody in a lie, a really serious lie, that would be different. But what of a situation where somebody is yelling and like calling you names and saying, well, and then you're trying to, how can you have a conversation with somebody like that? And that's where I have trouble turning towards somebody and showing the love of Christ if they're being abusive verbally or emotionally. I can't, in other words, and Father Theodore, we had a Zoom on this last year where you talked about how we have to set healthy boundaries for ourselves and take care of ourselves. So I want to just say that because sometimes people can take things very literally and think, well, does that mean that I have to be a doormat about this because I'm a Christian? And I think if somebody comes to you with a very valid, very calmly, like they are in these videos, I find that to be very acceptable. Listening and okay, I feel upset. I feel bad that I'm letting you down. You're causing, it's always difficult for us to feel that we're disappointing somebody. It's a shock to our pride and ego. So that to answer your question, to get to the heart of the matter, it strikes our ego when somebody calls us out on something and asks and says that they're not happy with it. Does anyone else agree with that? I don't know. Or how do you?
I'm sorry, Father Patrice, did you have something?
Well, I was just trying to bite my tongue and let somebody else answer. But yes, Nisi, I agree with you totally that these are very kind of subtle, these short video clips of people as they're talking to one another. I mean, just the fact that they're just sitting and actually talking to each other is not how often how things are in our interactions with each other and as married couples. Normally, when you get to defensiveness, it's ratcheted up a great deal. There's anger, there's frustration. The sarcasm can really be hurting and biting, and in those moments, that was going to be my original comment. It's just hard for me not to want to defend myself a little bit, and if I'm not looking at and trying to understand that the pain that my wife is feeling in a particular moment, or whatever feelings that she's going through, and trying to understand them, then my mind is often trying to just take is to kind of find, how do I explain why I disagree with her opinion about something? But that's not the right thing to do in those moments.
Right. I agree that these videos are very, like I said before, very benign in their presentation. Remember, some of them have the lie detector thing on it, and I think that may be part of the study, and they're measuring their heart rate. I don't know. Anyway, so they know that they're being recorded. So when you're being recorded, you're going to fight differently. Number one. So So yes, I agree with that. And again, like Father Petrini said, by the time you get to defensiveness, things are up here usually, they are, you know, either screaming or yelling or, throwing out big, nice, yucky words. um, and to speak to Cornelius's point, they're now in a pattern where they are defending themselves and putting that wall up to stop the hurt that comes from experiencing the contempt and the criticism that they continue to go round and round with in their conversations, in their interactions together. So whether or not somebody is saying that they're hurt, by the time they get to this point, the initial, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but there's this wheel of feelings. And if you look at anger, the root feeling of anger is hurt. And so when somebody gets to, when this is what's coming out, and that's what you see first, underneath all of that is hurt. Underneath all of that is pain. And, more often than not, and I will say this, and again, this is a generalization, but I believe there is research behind this. Women have a tendency to be able to share hurt a little bit better than men. And so more often when you see men, they will express anger first before expressing hurt. And that sometimes comes from, and I know that Cornelius talked about lack of respect. And it starts in that pattern. It's criticism and contempt. And then it goes to defensiveness. And really it's hurt. Somewhere in there, we feel hurt. We feel, hurt. Anybody have any thoughts about that?
So it can actually be an appropriate thing when we express ourselves to just identify the feelings that we're having. So often we confuse our own perspective of something with our feelings, and we're expressing our perspective. We think we're expressing our feelings, and we even do this in language. How do you feel about it? And then a person will just say what they're thinking as opposed to what they're really feeling. Philip, just as an aside, but Philip calls this the sacrament of daily living. And he says, basically, there's three ways of communicating between all couples. There's a turning towards a person, turning against the person, and a turning away from a person and turning against the person. And you see these in the Four Horsemen, right? The turning away and then the turning against the person. And he says that, what we strive to do is turn towards the person. So a turning towards is always, we prioritize the need of the other person and in trying to understand the other person over our own need at that moment, our own thoughts about it. The turning away from a person is when we prioritize ourselves over the other person, and the turning against is when we purposely try to harm the other person because of their own pain that we're feeling. So if in the moment when we're very angry, this is where I'm going with all this, in the moment that we're very angry about something, if we start by simply communicating, I'm really upset right now, that is a turning towards the person.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a turning away. That is an act of love to even say to somebody else, I'm really upset right now, because we're opening up. It's more like we're beginning to confess what's going on in our hearts, as opposed to just to begin by saying things. Oftentimes we think I'm communicating that I'm angry because I'm actually calling this other person a name. And we're not thinking about the fact that we could be hurting them with the name that we're saying. We're just thinking about the fact that I'm communicating my anger right now. It's just coming out in this way, but they should understand that it's because I'm angry. and not take it to heart that it's directed at their person. And yet that's exactly how, you know, the evil one gets us to just the fire to grow, to that to build this unity.
I love the way you said that, to confess to one another. I think that's a really beautiful way of looking at that, you know, to confess what's on your heart and to share, you know, your discontentment, what it is that made you upset, how you felt offended, and to do that with the posture of love and gentleness and kindness, the best that you can. You know, that takes sometimes a lot of practice, and it might take a time out. It might take a moment. It might take, you know, a few breaths, a moment in the bathroom, 24 hours, you know, whatever it is, to be able to get to the point where you're not causing harm with your words in these actions that are withdrawing from that emotional bank account. Again, that emotional bank account is real, whether we name it or not, but it's there. And so let's move to our last horseman here, since we're running out of time.
Sophia, can I just interject one thing? I'm sorry.
Yes. Oh.
I appreciate your concern about our time. It's just very important for us to recognize that there's a difference between feelings and thoughts or perceptions of things. And that is, a feeling is never wrong. It may not be a good feeling, it may be a very horrible feeling, but a feeling is what it is. Our perceptions are rarely ever 100% true. Most of the time, a perception, there's a degree of truth to it. None of us sees the whole picture. None of us sees things the way that God sees them, you know, at any moment. And so when we communicate with one another, it's so helpful when we can differentiate between the two, and we can strive to name the feeling for what it really is, to name the feeling, to express our feelings by saying that as a feeling, as opposed to, and when we share our opinion, like the person walks in an hour late, didn't call ahead of time, the other person was waiting for them for dinner, and when they walk in the door, the person who's been waiting says, "You don't love me." And they think they're expressing their feeling of hurt that the person didn't call for an hour, but what they've actually expressed is a judgment on the other person, you know. Because if you loved me, you would have called. There may be some real truth to that, you know, but when we're communicating with one another, it's so helpful that we differentiate between the two in how we listen and in how we speak. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was beautifully said. Thank you.
I wanted to jump in just for a second. We're behind a black screen here, so sorry.
It's okay.
What you said about hurt, I think, was very profound, because I think at the bottom of a lot of things is hurt. So then the issue really becomes, if somehow you can surface what the hurt is, then compassionate comes out. It's a game changer. So it's almost like digging just enough so you figure out the hurt. And the other thought I was having too is, I think back, sometimes when things can get tougher, an affirmative voice from the outside has been very helpful. I can think of Rula's aunt once, my mom once, where they just say something, "Hey, you guys, you know, you love each other, or you're great together," or some affirmative comment from somebody on the outside. It really helps a great deal. So again, I don't know where that fits in, but rather than having four horsemen chase me off a cliff, I think I'd rather like have my mom say something, you know. So
I love that. It's true. We live in community, and these people who are around us, who we trust, whose judgment we trust, to allow them to their voice to minister to our need, you know, in the moments where our marriages are starting to slip a little bit. That's God. That is, I believe, the hand of God intervening in those moments. So it doesn't mean as you're starting to slip, well, we need a therapist, we need to go run to the priest. No, mom and dad might be around, your aunt, like Deacon said, you know. So yeah, who wanted to say something? Somebody had their hand up. Oh, 28, sorry. Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm really trying not to talk too much. Um, First of all, I want to say, I know this is a sidebar. I love Deacon Jim. I don't know what it is about Deacon Jim, but I just love him. From the first time we spoke, we never had a long conversation at all, but it's just something about him that I just think is so, I don't know. So
Feelings
thank you.
mutual.
So thank you. Thank you so much, sir. What I was going to say is the thought that came to my mind was about understanding the motives of the other person's heart. So in my relationship with Sophia, she um, she's learned how to talk to me in a way that I can receive what she's saying, because I understand that her motives are pure and that she's not out to disrespect me, or she's not out to put me down or to belittle me or talk to me in a condescending way. But she's learned how to talk to me. And because she takes the time to do so, it makes me listen to her more to what she's saying. So I say all that to say is what I was thinking about is just understanding the motive of the other person, and that the communication that comes forth, any understanding that comes forth out of that. In the words of Deacon Jim, I don't know where that fits, but that's just that was on my mind.
Let me tell you where it fits, in my emotional bank. You just deposited, sir. Yes, actually, sorry. But anyway, um, thank you for sharing that. Thank you. It does, sometimes we need to take a step away, and it doesn't mean that these things are not going to happen, but, to take some time away and remember that you love this person, remember their heart towards you, that you're in this together, in this work of salvation, in this work toward oneness. So yeah, that's good. Let me share this last little snippet of stonewalling here. And yeah, let me do that. Hold on.
Well, what do you want to talk about the money? What about do you want to talk about? On the money part.
Well, what do we think about that one?
It's painful just to watch.
It really is. It really is. For me, I feel like this is the most, and obviously it's at the bottom here, the fourth one. It's like the most dangerous. I've seen stonewalling go wrong in a second. Just in one moment, turn into violence, turn into ugly, because sometimes the stonewalling, as you see, people have shut down. They're seemingly tuned out. But a lot of times there's a lot of emotion underneath there. There's a lot of things going on. I mean, some people are just truly checked out, but sometimes, that's not the case at all. And so this could be almost like poking the bear. If you poke the bear, somebody is going to flip out. And so, but when you get to this point, people are tired. They're just worn out, clearly worn out.
So there may be a difference between a person saying, I need a break right now. I need a timeout because I don't want to say or do something that I know I'm going to regret. And where a person's at the point where they're stonewalling, as in, I'm so overwhelmed by this that I can't even do that. I can't even ask for time and look for a break. I'm already with inside of myself giving up, or you know, in a state very close to despairing over our future together and so forth.
Mhm.
We see some hands.
Yes, Angela. We can't hear you.
Okay. I'd like to hear your thoughts about this, with the difference between the stonewalling and the defensiveness in terms of a personality, kind of tying it back to the fight or flight response. I know in our relationship, we often go back and forth with that, where I become defensive and more verbal, and George stonewalls, he shuts down. And so it kind of feeds off on each other, right? Because the more I try to communicate, the more I want a response, the less responsive it becomes. And that just kind of fuels, you know, the anger or whatever. So I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are when you're looking at that personality component.
And then we're tempted to heighten the degree of our comments, the sarcasm and so forth,
right,
almost just to get a reaction. So
right.
that the person's no longer passive.
And so that becomes the, you know, the criticism and the contempt, and it kind of just feeds into all of that. So how do you stop that? How do you get more patience?
How do you stop that? Well, it's some of the things we've already been naming. It is, you know, it's hard work, and it's one decision, one moment at a time. You know, it's not this perfect fix, and you know, we plug this in, we turn the key, and then, you know, voila, it's all taken care of. Someone has to make a decision to stop the cycle, to stop the pattern. And in order for that to happen, awareness of the pattern even happening, of you starting to slip down that slippery slope, has to happen. And so I guess step one would be awareness of when it starts to happen. And then what you do in that moment to stop it could be the person who has the awareness to name it. Hey, wait, we're about to go down this. We're about to go back and forth. Somebody needs to have that presence of mind. And when that happens, name it, and then an action behind it. What would that action look like? Well, it could be something as simple, other than naming it. What can we do differently? Or give me a break, give me a moment to settle myself. You know, I forget who it is, but there's this whole thing behind it where you actually just take a few minutes. Maybe if you're in the kitchen having an argument, you go into your bedroom, you take a few minutes, and you come back. See, the point is to come back. You don't get to say, okay, we're going to stop this, and then go away 3 days later. Nobody has talked about what just happened. The point is to come back, because then that situation is going to come back again, and you're going to be challenged. What are you going to do? Are we going to go down the slope, or are we going to create another pattern or create another cycle? So I don't know if that helps, but prayer for the awareness and the grace to stop it when it's starting to happen, and then maybe take a break. And then that would be my first, and I know it gets more complicated than that, but that would be my first thought. Father Patrides?
Yes, certainly everything that Sophia just said, I want to echo. I'd say that this is the place where we remember that I really can't change the other person, but I can always work on myself. So, oftentimes these type of things, it's like we're building a wall in between our property and the next person's property. I can't take down the bricks that they put into that wall, but I can take down the bricks that I put into it. I can go back to working on my side of the street, and that means I focus on myself. And so if I look within inside of myself, I can ask the Lord, as Sophia said, in that time where I step away and I try to gain self-awareness, ask Lord, help me to see my sins, help me to see what I'm doing wrong in this circumstance. And then as he will, because he loves us in his mercy, reveals to us what it is that we're doing wrong, we can acknowledge that. And the first thing that may help is that's taking our stone off of the wall. We can go back and say, I'm sorry about this, this, and this. I recognize that was wrong of me.
And that's so beautiful, because humility has such a beautiful way of diffusing what is happening. So if somebody comes with that attitude, with that posture, after you've had your time out, your moment of reflection and identifying what role you're playing in it, and you come back in humility, it has a way of just disintegrating the very possibly toxic response or reaction that was going to occur. So yeah. If we get to this place, unfortunately, with the fourth horseman, we start to tear apart into that oneness starts to become two-ness. That is not even a word, but two different worlds start to emerge, is my point. And so obviously we're all here to try to stay on and to work towards staying on that path of oneness. In that packet that Father Patrides sent out to you all, there's a questions there for discussion, and I would encourage you to maybe go through some of those for yourself and with your partner, if you can, if you have a few moments, and maybe we can discuss maybe in our next session just maybe one question and how what you came up with, but I want you to keep the emotional bank account in mind. I think it's a very practical way of, day-to-day interaction, making a decision to deposit and not withdraw. And if withdraw, it's a heavy weight. That those small daily interactions, it's not something that has to be extravagant and a huge gesture to deposit into that emotional bank account. And it is a we account, not just a me account. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the words of St. Paul, and that is basically defining love. And so in his letter to the Corinthians, in chapter 13, verses 4-7, it says, "Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the right. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." Father Patrides?
Thank you, Sophia. This is the most difficult of the 6 sessions, because we're looking right at the brokenness of and yet this is still a part of the journey, So thank you all for your patience this evening as we took us down the slippery slope. And Sophia, I thought you did a great job tonight. Thank you so much. Everybody who the things that you shared, I thought they were all very helpful. Deacon Jim, would you be willing to lead us out in prayer?
Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, now and forever, and to the ages of ages. Amen. Lord have mercy,
Amen.
Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Holy Father, give the blessing.
Father Deacon, please say a closing prayer.
Okay. Our Lord, forgive us for our sins. We are broken. We often don't know what to say or do, and we have our own hurt inside of us. Give us the grace to heal that, to help each other, and to see each other as paths to heaven. Bless everyone in their week and all that they have to do. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
We will
Thank
see
you
you
all.
next Wednesday. I'm sorry.
No, I said thank you all. Go ahead.
We'll see you all next Wednesday, hopefully here, God willing, at 7 p.m. You guys have a great week. Thank you so much for your time and for your discussion. Blessings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mitchell. See you next week.
Thank
Good
you.
night. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good night,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Yeah, I guess I'll